This is Ross, and if you watched my video yesterday, you know that I told you that there was an instance where my son was threatened. He's in Juvenile Detention Center, and I was notified yesterday, later on in the day, that after I'd spoken with my son's social worker, that there was actually an altercation, physical altercation between my son and the young man who had been causing problems for him. And so, as a form of punishment, my son was placed inside of his cell for the entire day, almost up to 5 o'clock the next day, and his mattress was taken from him. So as he slept, he had to sleep on a very hard steel frame, a steel or metal frame. If you have a bed at home, there's a frame, it's something similar to that. It's a metal frame, and the mattresses are very thin anyway to begin with, but as a form of punishment, they took his mattress from him and had him sleep on this metal frame, basically just a hard metal frame. So to me, that's a form of abuse. I mean, it's funny how people, DCFS, could come in here and accuse me of neglect, even though I never neglected my children, but then have my children subjected to an environment where they're actually being abused and neglected. How does that happen? If there were reports of me having my children sleeping on a metal frame, you'd say that was abuse. You'd call it neglect and then remove them out of the home. So how is it that as a form of punishment, Juvenile Detention Center can use these extreme measures on children? These are children. Whether they committed offenses or not, these are still children who are still developing in their brains. They're not adults, and you subject them to these type of situations. Not only that, my son tried to prevent the situation from occurring, and they didn't do anything to separate the two gentlemen from each other. I did things on my behalf. I spoke to a social worker who actually told me that she would, notify the staff to have them keep, my son and this young man separate. This young man is still pursuing my son, and now he's threatening to rape him. My son talked to me and said that the boy threatened to rape him. I don't know if, this boy has himself been sexually abused, because my son did tell me that he smears feces over the walls and over the windows of his cell. And, he went into my son's room one day because they had to clean out his cell because it was, feces everywhere, smeared all over the place. And this boy is subjected to this environment, this condition, where he probably needs much more help than what the detention center can give him. Of course, he's still there. And the thing is, this can pose a threat towards my son. And I'm speaking out about this because, DCFS and the Cuyahoga Juvenile Courts, they need to be held accountable also. The thing is, they go into the homes, they enforce their laws on these parents and accuse them of every single thing, and they will go down to the very detail and state things like the parent did not have their children, receiving counseling or therapy, or they make up all these accusations and reasons to remove the children from the parents, saying they're unsafe. Or as Jason Vincent said in court, that I was so delusional that, because of my beliefs, I could possibly think my son was a demon and do something to him. Yes, he said this. This is one of the arguments he used in court, that who's to say I wouldn't think my son was a demon one day and do something to him. But you have my son sitting in a juvenile detention center, wrongfully sitting in a juvenile detention center because of all of the competency issues, the IQ, the delays, and everything else. You have him in a situation where you were already advised to find placement for him, where you already agreed that this was not the suitable, proper place for him, but you have him sitting here in this place where he is being threatened to be stabbed, he's being threatened to be raped, he's sitting in a hot room, locked with a locked metal door with a small window that does not open. There's no air ventilation. He's lying on a metal frame, sleeping on a metal hard frame with no mattress. He has no toilet inside, so it's unsanitary because when, if the guard can't open the door or doesn't hear him, he's forced to urinate or defecate on himself. He's also only gone outside one time. He's seen sunlight and fresh air. He's been allowed to have sunlight and fresh air one time within the nearly 2 months he's been held there. So this is the thing. These are poor, hazardous conditions. These are not conditions that are, conducive to someone's mental health, especially a developing child whose brain is still developing, who's still learning. How is this something that cannot hinder them cognitively, especially if that child already has a disability? You see, when my son was first placed in the Juvenile Detention Center, I was upset at God. Exactly the same way I was upset when he was first placed into foster care. But as I stated time and time again, God allowed these situations to happen and occur to expose the evil and wickedness that's been happening to many children all around this country. You lock up our children every day. You do things to them. You put them in, subject them to neglect and abuse. And you do everything in your power to keep them from their children, from their families and their parents. A lot of time, parents don't even know about these situations that they're occurring because they can't even speak to their child. Like I said, it took several weeks for me to even be able to have phone conversations with my kid. And I had to sit here and speak up. And because I'm speaking out, that kind of accelerates things because I'm bringing attention and awareness to it. If I didn't have this channel and this voice, I'm quite sure they'd be doing whatever they want to do, and even worse than what they're doing right now. And there's a lot of children, hundreds of thousands of children who are suffering every day in these conditions. There are some places that do have juvenile reform. And there are some places that are not. They're putting an end to our children being taken out of the home for every little thing and being subjected to these type of conditions. This is not going to improve someone's mental health. This is not going to improve the situation of a child and help them develop as an adult. When you're sitting here, putting them in isolation, my son sat there for nearly 24 hours in a room by himself. That was basically solitary confinement with absolutely nothing to do. But you tell me this is something that's supposed to help him, that's supposed to rehabilitate him and reform him? I am speaking out because I'm tired of the injustice. And they have done everything in their power to try and bully me by keeping my children from me, by pink slipping me and putting me in a mental institution and screaming at the top of their lungs that I have a mental illness. Something that still has not yet been proven, a mental illness that would keep my children away from me. The thing is, I'm doing the work of God. God allowed these situations to happen, and every time you do this, you thought that you were punishing me and retaliating against me. But everything you do is just bringing more exposure to you and your evil that you've done, and it's putting you on the hook now and holding you accountable. Like I said before, if you hadn't messed with me and took my children out of this home, I wouldn't have known anything about the Juvenile Detention Center. I wouldn't have known anything about foster care, how the juvenile justice system works. I wouldn't have known anything. There would not even been any videos. If you look at this entire channel, you can go back to the date these videos started, and it was after my children were removed from the home. So believe me, I'm going to do everything in my power with my small voice that I have. But guess what? I have a big backing behind me. I have my Heavenly Father, who is the God of this earth. I have him backing me up, even if no one else will stand by me, even if I can submit out requests to every organization there is, which is something, yes, I have been doing. Even if you all reject me because you're in it together and you refuse to help me, believe me, God will get this done because he wants to protect his children. And those of you who did not stand up and do what you're supposed to do, you're going to be judged. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.